Now if that title seems familiar to you, then the chances are you've seen this video here. I came across this video by Intel Edits and Karl not too long ago, and as I started watching it, there were so many things I noticed that, as an experienced bedwars player, it was just like, oh no. There's a reason why the big bedwars sweats usually don't make videos like how to get good at bedwars, and that's because as you get more experience with bedwars, you realize that there aren't just certain things you can do to get better, aside from, speed bridging, being aware of your enemies, using different items to your advantage, stuff like that. Everything else is just learned through experience. Everyone plays different, and one person's playstyle may not work for another, which is why, you can't just say, do this to be good at bedwars. Now, as I said in my Q&A, the best thing you can do to get better is learn from your mistakes. For instance, if you lose a game, you should try and figure out why you lost and how to prevent it next time. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to be going through this video with you guys today, pointing out things that I think they could have improved on, but also pointing out things that they did really well, so I'm hoping you guys will learn a lot from this video. I'd also like to just mention real quick that I am not in any way hating on Intel or Karl. I've actually talked to Karl before. He's a super chill guy. I know when people are correcting you or criticizing your playstyle, it can come off as a little offensive, but I promise that is not what I'm trying to accomplish here. Pretty much what I'm just trying to do here is give my opinion and give some, further tips building on what they talked about in this video. Now, if you don't know me or why you should trust me rather than Karl or Intel, here are my stats, and I know my star is quite low on this account, but I think my 100 FKDR here says a little bit more about my skill than my star. Of course, I rarely get carried here. I have a beds broken loss ratio of over 10, so I think, I'm pretty trustworthy when it comes to knowing my stuff in bedwars, but without further ado, let's get into the video.
Let's get right into the video.
Let's get it.
So I want to start off this video.
I also want to start off Intel by saying, I'm not going to be too critical, I could be saying, you have to always throw out your iron ingots so that you can pick them up later, but I'm not going to be that harsh. What I want to say for this part is keep an eye on the time here.
Game sense all the more.
So he pretty much cuts that part, but it got to what part did I get to? It got to around 5 minutes and 12 seconds, I think, when he cut. 5 minutes 13 seconds. Now I want to show you guys something. Now unfortunately Rooftop is no longer in the rotation, but I just wanted to test how long it takes me to do a side rush. I tested this on the map Skyrise because it's the most similar to Rooftop, but I found that if I rushed right away, I could get to the next base at around Diamond 2 in 5:25. Now the reason this is important is because in Intel's gameplay, he actually doesn't check if anyone's side rushing him from about 5:27 till 5:13, and that's just when it cuts. There's a big possibility that by his second cut, he still has not checked behind him, which of course on Rooftop isn't that big of a deal because people don't usually side rush, but it's always important to be aware of it.
You don't have to be the best at PvP to play bedwars, because if you have that game sense, then you're going to be able to outplay a lot of people in your lobby.
Good combo there.
However, there are
now as you can see here, this guy's rushing sideways, so it's not something that never happens, so you always got to be aware on every map of if someone's going to side rush you. Okay, so at this part here, he's going into a bridge fight, and I want you guys to note what he does here.
It's the ability to sprint reset, and what I mean by that is not going.
So he places a block, attempts to jump on the block, hits this block here, so his sprint is stopped, and then he falls because of it. He luckily does still get the hit and knocks the guy off, but here's what he should have done in that situation. If there are some blocks in between you and your enemy, you should be able to jump around, clutch on the side, and hit your enemy off, which I think is what Intel was going for, so good on him for that.
KB people into the void, combo people.
Now, if you guys saw that, I'll rewind it a bit. Later in the video, he talks about, placing blocks in fights to give yourself the advantage. If you place a block right in front of someone, it can stop their sprint, and then you can get a free hit because of that. What he ends up doing in this fight is actually placing it too close to him, so he actually stops his own sprint rather than this guy's. Now, of course, Intel's a really good PvPer, so it doesn't really affect him that much. So he still is able to get a double hit on that guy there.
W tapping. If you
now, at this part, he has another bridge fight here, and watch this.
PvP.
He hits this guy straight on, whereas if he had hit him to the side, like this way or that way, either way, he would have gone flying off. So in bridge fights, you typically want to just aim to knock the guy off rather than to do damage to the guy.
The next thing I want to talk about is the ability.
So as you can tell, he hit him straight back and he landed on the bridge. Now, what Intel does here is pretty good. He knocks him, but this guy actually falls here. If he had landed there, Intel wouldn't have known, because look, Intel does not look back until here. So good on Intel for looking back here, but that was a little bit late. I mean, he still would have had time to void and get back to his base, but typically you want to avoid bed trades in Bed Wars. Correction on my last point, I meant to say Intel could have gotten the bed and then voided. Now here you see he just killed this guy, but what he does here is go for this first block here, and the guy is respawning. So what happens here is, I mean, he actually could have got that bed in time, but typically you want to go for the last block here, and I'll show you why. I tried to recreate the situation as best I could, but typically if you go for the farthest block, you'll have time to break the block and the bed before the guy can come out to you.
personal preference, but you
now Intel ends up actually stopping his sprint again with a block here. However, you know, he does have to kill this guy again because he didn't get the last block here. So I mean, nothing wrong with that. You want to boost your KD, you can do that. But what Intel is actually talking about here is hotkeying, which is super important, and I'll tell you why. I'm just on a survival world for this one, but I'm hoping it'll do. You know, I created my bedwars hotbar, TNT in 4, blocks in 6, sword in 1. And as Intel mentioned, it is so important to hotkey in bedwars. For instance, if I'm fighting someone here, I can quickly go to my 4 slot, place a TNT over there, you know, block up real quick, place a TNT, go back to my sword. So, you know, having hotkeys without having to scroll or look at your, you know, hotbar or look at your keyboard, it's really important. It makes gameplay so much quicker and so much better.
And it stops their movement.
I think he
also,
shows,
a video
he shows it here. So yeah, this is really good. Watch this. He places it, you know, far enough from himself that he's not going to run into it, but close enough to this guy that guy will run into it. He stops. This guy's movement is completely stopped, meaning he can't get the hit. And then, you know, Karl Papa ends up getting the free hit here and then a double hit because of that.
But being versatile with your blocks is probably one of the biggest mechanical skills in bedwars.
Now that's ironic. He says being versatile with your blocks is important. But see what he does there and here. Watch this.
Anyways, that's just about it for this segment, so I'm going to go ahead and let Karl explain.
He bridges way up to jump here, so he's going to take some fall damage. Whereas what he could have done in that situation, let's pretend that's the building, is just, you know, bridge up just a little bit and then, you know, place a block like that, so it's a lot faster movement and a lot smoother as well.
Anyways, that's just about it for this segment, so I'm going to go ahead and let Karl explain the next one.
Hey guys, what's up?
So at this part in the video, Karl Papa takes over, so let's get into his gameplay.
I have to make this intro short because basically this map is an 8-iron rush, which means you wait till you have 8 iron and then you rush.
Now, you can get away with doing an 8-iron rush if your neighbor doesn't know what they're doing, or in doubles, because, you know, if they get past you, you have a teammate. But when you're doing an 8-iron rush, you can't build up at all. So all it would take is, you know, if your neighbor sees you, they build up a bit, then you have no more blocks, and you really can't defend yourself. Or if you fall off your speed bridge while doing your 8-iron rush, you're pretty much screwed, and you'll see what happens here.
How you want to use games?
So as you saw there, no bed defense, neighbor's pretty much just AFK in the gen, not ready for him, so he was able to get away with the 8-iron rush. But typically, if you have a sweaty first rush, you always want to grab at least 12, maybe even 16 iron to do the rush with, so you can place, you know, some wool on your bed first of all. But watch what Karl does here.
Sense to your advantage in winning the game. His game sense is one of the more important parts about.
So what happened was he ran up to the side when this guy was pretty much AFK, or what he was actually doing was typing. So if Karl had just rushed this guy and, you know, crit him out, he would have won that fight there. But he actually gives this guy time to get a stone sword. Now if you kill someone and then get their bed, you know, they respawn, have spawn prot, they have time to grab their gen, then run over here, grab a stone sword, they have a few more seconds of spawn prot before they hit you. So in a scenario like that, then yes, you may want to run over to the side or maybe even to the top of the base here so you can surprise attack them by dropping down. But in a scenario like the one that just happened where the guy was just, you know, chilling in his gen, didn't have a stone sword yet, Karl should have just rushed him, crit him out, and he would have won. And as you can see here, the guy gets a stone sword and then ends up killing Karl. But typically, yeah, you don't want to let them get anything from the shop when they respawn or before they fight you even, because this guy didn't even respawn.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be talking to you about it like a few.
Now one thing that's really good here on Karl's part is that he has really good awareness of where his enemies are. You know, he looks over here, looks to mid, looks to see if red's rushing. He just saw white that wasn't rushing, so he has time to go and spend these diamonds.
Game sense is basically.
Now he runs back with these 4 diamonds, and then you can see here that he got sharpened swords. Now in solo mode, that is absolutely never something you want to do. Always go with prot trap to start, especially in solo, because, you know, in doubles you have a teammate to alert you if someone's rushing your base, but in solo, if you're on the other side of the map and someone rushes your base, you won't even know if they're at your base about to break your bed if you don't have a trap. So always prioritizing a trap for solo is what you want to do.
Bad, like I wanted to wait a little bit because you know,
absolutely perfect block placement right there. Stops this guy's movement. He doesn't run into it, and then he's able to kill this guy because of it with a double hit.
I want to use this fireball at the right time. You know, I could probably.
So this fireball here just doesn't make much sense. He threw it right at that guy's face. Obviously that can work if you hit them direct on. It does deal some knockback to them. However, if you throw it right at someone's face, they can deflect it, and
right
it looks like that's what happens here. But he actually this guy throws a fireball of his own. But typically you want to aim for a block that's beside them. Number 1, so that they can't deflect it back, and number 2, so that it deals sideways knockback to them. So if he'd hit like this block here, obviously the guy's here, so he'd have gotten sent this way. I also want to note that he does have a lot of blocks here. I mean, I can't judge him for, you know, maybe he wants to build a lot, but typically on a map like Lighthouse where all the bases are really close to each other, you really don't need this much block, so he could have saved some iron there.
Please go ahead and.
That's an example of a perfect fireball. So he throws it right at the block beside him to send him this way. The guy wasn't even ready for it, so he couldn't deflect it back, and he falls because of that. Now at this part, what he does is he runs into this battle with 3 diamonds. Now if you're confident with PvP, you think you can kill someone like this, then, you know, it's okay. But typically, if you don't think you have a perfect chance of winning that fight, I'd, you know, throw the diamonds off the cliff first, because you know, Karl's not going to use them, so you might as well not let this guy use them either. He plays this really well. What you should do when you get trapped like that is run away, because, you know, you can't take this guy in the fight with slowness and blindness. So, you know, placing blocks in front of this guy to stop his movement is exactly what you should do. Now, I actually have to give it to Karl here. He almost wins this fight with just 3 hearts. Unfortunately, he doesn't and loses the 3 diamonds and the iron sword, but, you know, it was worth a shot.
What, dude? He has slowness. This is horrible. But you know what?
Almost kills him there. One more hit would have got him.
Okay, it does.
Now with this part is just funny to me. I mean, he's bridging with wood planks. Now the only reasonable explanations I have for this is either he accidentally bought 2 purchases of wood and, you know, bridges with them instead of wool, or he accidentally spent all of his iron on a fireball and had to buy wood for it. But, you know, the thing is, if you're bridging with wood, it's not a bad thing. However, he doesn't have an axe here, so if he has to block himself in somewhere and needs to get out, he can't get out. He's gonna have to punch it down himself. So that's why, I mean, I would have just waited for another 8 iron in the gen and got wool, but I mean, it's up to you.
A little bit of map knowledge. I just know he's not gonna make.
So the guy gets another It's a Trap here. Karl just gets this bed and then voids straight away. Now, there goes another iron sword, all his wood, 3 diamonds, and a fireball. What I think he should have done here is fireballed the bed real quick, which would have gotten rid of the wool. Then he doesn't waste the fireball at least. Gets the bed that way. He could have quickly stashed this and had enough time to void, because as you see, when he voids,
now I'm gonna pull a cheap move.
The guy isn't even anywhere close. So he could have stashed all that stuff. And this part is just, I mean...
So I can just void right here. Now I'm gonna pull a cheap move and...
If you're talking about game sense and you buy a bow and arrow, I mean, seriously? Getting a bow and arrow is the absolute last thing you want to waste your gold on. The only times I can really see getting a bow as being helpful is when you don't have a bed, if you're fighting a hacker and you need, you know, range damage against them because they have reach, or if the guy you're fighting has a bow as well and you need to, you know, do that bow duel. Quite a waste of gold here, especially since he has a wood sword. Could have gotten an iron sword with that and a gap, but I mean,
and buy a bow and arrow because you know, that's just what you got to do sometimes.
No, absolutely not. That's not what you got to do sometimes.
If he had the game sense,
So what Karl ends up doing is just camping behind this tree here, shifting, waiting for the guy to come. This strat works, but I mean, is it really necessary? What I would have done is just, you know, rushed over here, got the game over with, killed this guy. If he tries to run back away, he does have a bow here. It ends up working for Karl, so I mean, I can't judge. Now, this strat worked for him. You know, he ended up hitting his shot and knocking the guy off the bridge. What I think I would have done is just, you know, ambush the guy in here. You don't even have to knock him off, just, you know, PvP him and you would have won.
So depending on the situation, you might want to make a couple decisions.
Absolutely. This is a perfect point right here. Bedwars is a situational game, so you want to make decisions based on what happens. So I think the main part of getting better at Bedwars is just knowing how to adapt to different situations, because every single Bedwars game you'll ever play will be different. So, you know, knowing how to adapt to different situations, to different people's playstyles, that's how you'll get better at Bedwars.
Then going into...
So now we're back into Intel's gameplay, and he's talking more about game sense, but I just want to point out his bridge here. You know, on Rooftop he did the same kind of bridge, you know, just one stacking up. On Rooftop it's okay because, you know, you have to get a lot of height for that diamond gen, but on a map like Pernicious, this is not a good bridge, and I'll show you why. When you make the bridge, it really doesn't make that much of a difference, but speed is everything in Bedwars, so if you use a bridge like this, then you'll be able to get to the same point much faster. And I also want to mention that, you know, he started this bridge around 5:35, and watch how many times he looks back to see if he's getting side rushed.
By saying,
so, I mean, you can sort of see yellow here, and they aren't rushing, luckily for Intel. But, I mean, it's been like over 20 seconds. He still has not a single time looked and checked to see if yellow was rushing him. So, you know, if yellow did rush him, he would have lost his bed already. As you can see, it doesn't have any defense on it. As you can see here, this guy's rushing sideways. So people do rush sideways on Pernicious, so you always got to be aware of that. Intel actually does really, really good block placements, and you'll see that here.
Is a huge part of Bedwars, and there's,
you know, stops the guy's
so
movement
many
there.
good items
Gets another
in
hit.
the shot that you can use to put your...
This guy stopped his own movement with his own block.
...self an advantage, so...
And, you know, Flawless is the guy because of those blocks.
...to deal some splash damage in a fight, or you can...
Now, this part's quite ironic because he's talking about fireballs and how useful they are. You know, fireball jumps over this guy to get the kill. But then, this guy's a wool bed defense. You know, a fireball will take care of that right away, but what does he do? He mines it.
Are going down. When players go to mid and they get emeralds, a lot of the times they'll buy diamond gear, and you really don't want to do that. And the reason for that is because the other stuff that you can buy with emeralds is just better.
So, Two things I want to note there. Number one, that fight he just had was really good. Perfect block placements, got the kill on this Nyx player. But number two, he says that you don't want to get diamond armor because there are other better things to buy. Normally, I'd agree with this, and for my playstyle, I do agree because, you know, I always favor potions rather than diamond armor. Different people have different playstyles, and getting diamond armor definitely isn't something to be ashamed of. Diamond armor is just so unbelievably stacked and overpowered that, you know, you pretty much will never lose a fight if you have that. For instance, you know, Gamer Boydie gets diamond armor, and it's not because he's bad at PvP, but it's just because, you know, it's guaranteeing that he won't ever die in a PvP battle in the game. So, you know, definitely not something to be frowned upon if you get diamond armor. Very especially early on in the game. If you get diamond armor with the first round of emeralds, you're pretty much more stacked than anyone will be for a while in that game, so that's why diamond armor is a good early game purchase. Now we're going back to Karl to talk about clutching. He says this is an 8 iron rush, which, I mean, really risky. I wouldn't do it in solo, especially if you fall, and what do you know? Look what happens.
Rush, by the way. So basically what you want to know about clutching,
he falls off.
and there are two things you want to focus on when you are clutching. Well, there's more than two things, but as far as materials wise, you want a lot of diamonds and emeralds.
So he makes a good point there. When you are clutching, you do want to get stacked on diamonds and emeralds, preferably more emeralds if you can. If you don't have a bed, you pretty much just want to avoid everyone else in the game for as long as you can. You know, if no one's at mid, go and collect some M's. If people are at mid, you want to stay away from there. Maybe go to the diamond gens instead. But pretty much, you know, avoid fights until you are really geared and there's only a couple people left that you can just take out easily.
If you go to mid, you can build up places and get the height advantage. So we're just gonna hop down here, and
what he does there is perfect. You know, build up to the top of this thing so that he can't reach you. When he tries to come at you, just, you know, hit him down. You can either chase this guy here or run away. I think
like
Karl.
Yeah,
Karl runs this way. But either way, you just want to avoid fights as much as you can.
So now I should be frantically searching for yellow now because.
At this point, you know, with no beds left in the game, you can use a tracker, especially with 8 emeralds. And I think that would be a great idea to use, especially when people don't have a bed. Usually they rely on invis and stuff. So, you know, getting a tracker to see if they're getting closer to you or farther is obviously really important. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but typically you want to drink speed or jump first before invis, because
he literally,
by the time he drinks all his potions, he already has 4 seconds gone on his invis, and especially since invis is the lowest, you know, with only 30 seconds rather than 45, you typically want to preserve your invisibility.
He literally has no chance against us because we can legit hop up here.
Yikes. Okay, so what happened there is Karl tried to hit this guy off. It obviously didn't work, and then he got hit with the iron sword. Karl's making a good play here, gapping obviously when he's low. The jump boost obviously saves him there. But watch this.
Need a gapple. This server is like.
This guy makes a crit spamming box, or a jump crit box, whatever you want to call it. In Skywars, this isn't a good idea because, you know, you can just pretty much place lava here and then water here. They'd get obbied and they're stuck. But in bedwars, you know, you can't do that. The only problem with this in bedwars is that if this was completely closed off and they mined this block, they can just hit your feet. But other than that, this is a good idea. And when someone has something like this, you typically don't want to go in. But, you know, Karl
like
just
super laggy right now.
Karl just goes in for it and actually ends up winning because he has
better
speed.
Gear than him because I've gotten more
and better gear as well, so, you know, he was confident in that fight, but typically that's risky. Now this part is the most confusing part of the entire video, and you'll see why in just a moment. Now this part is the most confusing part of the entire video, and you'll see why in just a moment.
So let me give you guys an example to try and illustrate what I'm talking about. You're in a game, blue and white are across the map fighting each other, pink is across from you.
So he pretty much attempts to create a scenario in Bed Wars, but the reason why this doesn't work is because, number one, there's no illustration, there's no drawing to see what he's actually talking about. He says blue and white are across from you. I don't know if he meant aqua and white. But he pretty much just tells you what each player is doing, and the reason that doesn't work is because every Bed Wars game is going to be different.
Yellow's bed is gone, and they're pressuring other islands. What do you do? So
like, you can't, there's no right answer for this question, but I think he says here...
Right now, your biggest threat is pink.
He says the biggest threat is pink because they are right next to you. But the reason why that doesn't work is because what if pink is a noob? What if they're just doing the, you know, stay at their base and camp strategy? Then obviously it's going to be different, right? What if people are cross-teaming in the game? So obviously every Bed Wars game is going to be different. You can't just create a scenario and have a right answer. But I think that's all for this video. I'll watch a little bit more to see if there's anything else I want to talk about.
And you shouldn't be prioritizing yellow either since they don't have a bed.
There's some truth in what he says there, but the fact that he said you shouldn't be prioritizing yellow because they don't have a bed is also wrong, because as, you know, Karl talked about in the clutching part, people who don't have a bed are typically just going to go to mid and get stacked. So if you know, focus on everyone else in the game and then leave the guy without a bed till the last, and then he's, you know, got diamond armor, pearls, invis, everything, you're pretty much screwed at that point. Target who you think is going to be the best person to target.
I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.
Alright, well, that's the end of the video. That was a good video. Lots of good points in the video, also lots of things that could be improved upon. I'm sorry to Intel or Karl if this was offensive in any way. I wasn't trying to like put you guys down, but yeah, just trying to, you know, give my viewers some tips of stuff that I noticed as another experienced bedwars player. But yeah, good video, and I hope you guys enjoyed.